Welcome to Bled Talk, the podcast where insightful conversations meet language learning. I'm your host, Samuel Bledsoe, and on this show, we dive deep into a variety of topics with fascinating guests from all walks of life. Whether you're an English learner looking to sharpen your language skills, or simply someone who enjoys thought-provoking discussions, Bled Talk is something for you. From engaging interviews to solo episodes filled with knowledge and inspiration, join us as we explore the world one conversation at a time. Get ready for a journey of learning, curiosity, and meaningful dialogues. Welcome to Bled Talk. Here we go. Welcome everybody to this episode of Bled Talk. We have a very special guest. Her name is Hanna, and she's an English teacher, but she's also learning Chinese. She knows how to speak Spanish and is just always trying to improve and learn new things. And she has her Instagram page, and she also has her YouTube channel. So as soon as you can, go follow her and subscribe to all those things, because she has a ton of great tips and great things that she does, and she teaches in such a fun and energetic way. So with that being said, Hanna, thank you for coming on to the episode, and go ahead and tell us just a little bit about you and kind of how you got to where you are today.
Oh man, what a thrill to be here. First of all, thank you for inviting me and saying that I teach in such an energetic way. I love bringing in the energy. All right, let's take it back to leaving high school. Once you leave high school, everyone, actually way before high school, everyone's telling you, oh, what are you going to do when you grow up? What are you going to do about your career? What's your plan? What's going to be your major? A lot of pressure for sure. And I was all over the place. I was the multi-passionate kid that couldn't figure it out. I said, I'm going to be a masseuse. My mom says I'm really good at massaging. I'm going to be a masseuse. That was third grade. Then I said, oh yeah, no, you know what? I'm going to be a rhythmic gymnast. I think that's so cool. Then a volleyball player. Then I said, that's not unrealistic. That's just wasting time. I'm going to be interior designer. I said all these things, engineer, DJ, like all over the place. And the last thing I thought about was being a teacher. That never came into my head because, quote unquote, teachers don't make money, right? I was chasing the money, especially when it came to the engineering side. I was almost like right here, like this close to choosing engineering. And so anyway, figured out that wasn't my thing. I'm way too creative for that, way too extroverted for that. Get me out of this class. So then I was like, let me just choose business. Business is general, I can do what I want. I want to be my own boss. I was raised in an entrepreneur family. My mom, she ran her own business with my uncle. They grew their own business, never had a boss. We don't have that spirit. We don't like to do what we're told. So I'm applying to these random jobs around my house. Banker, like a bagger at a grocery shop near me, like a restaurant waitress, and I got rejected. I'm like, what's going on? Why is this happening? I have like the perfect resume. I have all these volunteer hours, perfect grades. Like, why? What's going on right now? And my mom, this whole time, she was like, you know what? You should apply to Amazon. They just built the Amazon warehouse. That's your place. Like, you can climb up the corporate ladder. You can be the CEO of Amazon. I'm like, okay. And so they finally finished building it. They put up the sign, like, text this to this number to apply to Amazon. I'm like, okay, I'm trying. I can't find the application anywhere. So all the doors were being closed. I'm like, where can I find the open door? Where can I go? And my mom was like, you know what? You've been volunteering, teaching English to my friend these past few months. How about, I have a friend, when her daughter quit engineering and she went to teach English online on VIP Kid. I'm like, what's that? What do you mean? How? Yeah, she was able to have a life like of her own in Prague and with her boyfriend, and they were living comfortably. I'm like, this seems like a good place to go. Send me the information. She's like, okay, let me send you the links. Ask my friend and let's see what happens. I got my TEFL certificate. In my head, I was like, teaching English. How am I going to teach English to people who don't speak English? I don't speak their language, so how do I even do that? I didn't understand how that worked. Couldn't fit in my head. And I was like, okay, this is going to be for sure a temporary thing. There's no way I'm going to do this like long term. It's just temporary, just for now, just during the pandemic, just for, being at home. And we have to get those hours. I forget how many hours, like 50 hours of like practice to get the certificate. And I keep tutoring this one girl from Taiwan. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so interesting. Like she's catching my words, and I'm able to express it in a different way when she doesn't understand it. And then she got it. Oh my gosh, she got it. Her face lights up. And I'm like, oh, this is special. This feeling is so great. I want more of this. This is really cool because I can make my own presentation, do my own activity. She's like, oh, this is fun. Okay. I like this. So that's when I went on to Amazing Talker. I got so lucky because the way the platform is designed, I can do my own thing. I don't have to follow any curriculum. Like, oh, this is creative freedom right here. Oh, yes. So it was just like my spirit just lit up. I was like, let me see how many different activities I can do on this topic, on this, on whatever, and test it out. I got very little money in the beginning. In the first month, it was just like, I just got $300, but I was doing like 12 hours a day. And I was like, dang. My mom was like, you're working way too hard. You're ridiculous. I'm like, but I love it. I want more. I was addicted. I was like one of those kids who are like gaming, but it was me teaching. Come on, more. She's like, no. We're killing yourself right now. 12 hours a day. This is ridiculous. Take out some hours on your schedule. I'm like, fine. So, then on the second month, I'm working less, but I got 2,000. I'm like, this is not bad. And in like the fifth month, I ended up being the top 2% teacher on the platform, Amazing Talker. I was like, oh, I just feel like I'm a random person over here. I wouldn't be the top percent. So like ever since then, I've just been hungry for more, hungry for helping people like achieve their dreams. I'm like, of course, I'm not doing all the effort. My students are putting in a lot of effort for sure. And I love that I can be a small piece of that. I have students that got into their dream college. One of my students just got accepted into USC. My other student opened up his restaurant in New York. I'm like, oh my God, so happy for you. You deserve that. And, they always have it in them, but it's like we just push them a little bit and it's just, it's so full of purpose. And I love that. And I'm still doing it, and I still want to see how big I can make it, how far I can reach, be a public speaker and get like big events in person. I can't wait to go in person. That sounds so thrilling to me. In the meantime, just build up my online presence, build my audience.
Right. Kind of go into like a mentorship after a little bit and be able to do things. I always tell people that's one thing that I really like about the podcast, that it gives me an opportunity to talk to people like you and kind of bring them into this culture of not just speaking better, but just being better, being better people. And I think a lot of people don't realize this, but when you learn a new language, you become a little bit better. You become a better person, and you become a little bit more aware of the world, aware of the things that are happening, because for a lot of people, where they speak their language, that keeps them to that place, right? The rest of the world speaks English most of the time. In most places where you go, you can speak English and people will understand you. And so the door that English opens for so many people is huge, right? If somebody can finally speak English and understand that, it opens a whole new horizon for people to go and do things, travel, understand, see different cultures, and do exactly what you were talking about, being able to watch them grow. And I think being teachers, almost helps us. It kind of it gives food for the soul, right? You feel happier because you watch people grow and watch people do things that they've been dreaming about their whole life. And like you said, they put in most of the effort, but I kind of like to think of us as like a tour guide. You're the person who's there and you're like, look at this thing, study this, you need help with this. And they kind of take that and run with it. And you watch people become great and you get to be part of their story. And I think that, kind of leaning on that being part of people's story, I like to participate in as many people's stories as I possibly can. I want to help people become great. I mean, I'm not great, but I hope to help people get there. I want to help people be on that journey. And I really like what you said. And so do you have any plans in the future of maybe kind of creating your own platform, or maybe even having your own courses that you're going to sell? Is that kind of where you plan on going forward with this?
Yeah, because right now, of course, money is a big issue. I don't do this for money anymore. Luckily, I don't have that mindset like I used to of working for money, working for money, working for money. I am passionate about this, so money doesn't matter. At the same time, like inflation is crazy. Debt is like stacking, and interest is eating my family at the moment. So like my family actually depends on me. I'm not making this money for myself. My mom depends on me. My brothers depend on me. I'm making money for the family. I'm the main provider right now. So there's pressure. And because of this financial pressure, that's a big push to expand further. Because if I could just do like classes one-on-one, I actually wouldn't mind. Actually, this is like, you can get personal connection. However, it's smart for me to go like not just hourly income. That's why I want to lean more on passive income, sell courses, sell memberships to make my money work for me. And I've also been investing money into my business, like, my fancy equipment and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And give higher quality education.
I tell people that all the time. I say, when you look at me, I was like, you see the books, you see, I have a football, a basketball, I have a light here, I have a little fan here because it gets hot. And, I have my microphone is there, my camera's the way it is. And it's all set up to bring a good environment to my students. And it's all an investment. I had to find a way, for some reason, this wall right here, for people who are just listening, imagine a wall that is impenetrable. Even the internet cannot get through the wall. And so I had to find a way to bring the internet through that wall, because for me, class needs to be enjoyable. It needs to be relaxing. I don't want people to be like, oh, I can't see him, or I can't hear him. What's he saying? And I always tell my students, I was like, I don't really care how your camera looks, because you can do it on your phone, you can do it however you want. But for you, you need to have a good picture of me. You need to see me, you need to hear me. And all that investment helps your students stay with you. Looking professional is just as important as being professional, because they like that. And I think you're totally on the right track, and, kind of like finding a way to make that income become passive, right? Membership, subscriptions, courses. And I'll tell you something that I've learned, especially from doing these podcasts, because I've talked to some teachers who have like they have the whole thing. They have the dream that you and I are both kind of going after. And something that I've learned is that if you do it by yourself, it's super painful. But if you find the right people to connect with, it makes you grow even more. And even these people who are really big in our little field of work, right, in English teaching, they are also looking for people to become part of them and to become part of their team. Because I think something that we all learn, because aside from being teachers, we're also business owners, we're also entrepreneurs. And we learned that growing by ourselves is a lot slower and more difficult than it is growing with somebody else. And so, but I can understand that pressure. I get it exactly what you said when you said that, it's sometimes you're teaching for money at sometimes, but you love it at the same time. So now it's not even just a money thing. But like you were talking about last week, money's important. It is.
Yeah.
It's important. I hate it when people say they're like, oh, money doesn't make people happy or this or that. And I'm like, I think that's something that somebody said at one point so that people who don't have money don't look for it and don't try to get it. It's like people kind of say to keep them down, And the thing is,
sure.
Today, and like you said, there's inflation, there's so much stuff that's going on in the world, and the people who don't have enough money are really suffering. And but in a lot of places, especially in the US or here in Brazil, it's possible to make more money. It's possible to grow. And I always tell people, especially when they talk about the United States and things like that, because a lot of people, they like to, especially nowadays, people like to talk bad about the US and tell me, especially me being here in Brazil, people love to tell me about what they think about the United States. But something I do always tell them is that in the United States, if you want to do something, it's usually pretty possible if you go after it. There's a lot of places that don't let you grow, don't let you create a business, because you can make a business, but once you get to a certain point, that's when the government looks at you and they're like, oh, look, he has money. And, they start to do that. And so I totally,
exactly.
And like for you, with this whole process of trying to grow and like teaching, what would you say is your favorite part of teaching people and of helping people learn a new language? So like what do you wake up and you go, I really hope that this happens today because I just love it when it does? What do you love?
Okay. The thing that like gives me so much energy in my classes is when my students ask me questions, because then they're hungry to know, they're curious, they find some piece that I taught them, like, oh, I teach them this phrase and you can use it in this situation. Okay, well, but Hanna, like, can I use it in this situation? And now I can see they're optimizing their learning because they want to know more, and there's like a switch in their mind that wants to really cover this. They feel like this information is important. I want to make sure I get it. And when I have those hungry learners, it's just the best experience because they're optimizing, they're filling in those gaps, versus the other learners, they weren't encouraged to ask questions. They don't know how to ask questions. It's a cultural thing. Like, people view questions as being stupid. And I hate this societal assumption that, oh, if you ask questions, that means like you did pay attention. No, come on. Like, let people ask questions because it's filling in all those gaps that they want to fill in. So I actually read a quote recently and I love it. I love it. It says, smart people ask stupid questions. Stupid people ask no questions. And I was like, oh my gosh. Not to insult people who don't ask questions, but it's encouraging for those people who just want to ask a question and just have the fear like, oh, maybe if I ask this question, it'll sound stupid. I had this in my education as well. Everyone in my class, as I was growing up, ever since elementary school, I was the smart kid. Oh, Hanna knows it. Oh, I want to be in Hanna's group. Hanna's smart. Oh, Hanna, you could be the leader. And I was like, oh my God, everyone is making this assumption that I'm the smartest. So because I'm the smartest, I can't ask any questions because then I lack knowledge. I can't be seen as that person. So it's a personal thing for me. I want to give the spirit that I wish I could have given my past self. I wish I could go back in time and say, hey, Hanna, just forget about it. Just ask the question. It's okay. You can. Yeah, no one cares. No one's going to remember your question tomorrow. So it's really nice that I can build up their confidence. Maybe in the beginning, they're super shy. My students like, oh, well, yes, got it. Mm-hmm. I'm like, hey, are you sure you got it? Because like, maybe there's something I didn't cover. Because maybe it's my problem. I'm the teacher. Maybe that I didn't explain something fully. And then by like lesson 7, they're asking more questions. I'm like, yes, I lit up your spark. Okay, let's go. Your spark has been lit. Let's take this further. So sometimes my class direction will go like, instead of like straight beginning, middle, end. It's like, oh, this, and then, this, whatever question they ask, and it goes into a new direction. That's interesting for me. That's what I look forward to on a daily basis.
Oh yeah, I love it when you go into class and like almost before you kind of even start introducing something, they just ask you something. They're like, hey, what's the difference between this and this? And you're like, thank you for asking a question. And you get to teach, because when you teach someone who asks a question, like you said, they're hungry for it. They want that response. And I agree with you. I think that, getting them to ask those questions. And then I would even go further in saying you being able to respond to their question, or what's even better is when you explain something and then they understand it because they thought about what you were explaining. They're able to make those connections. I just love seeing it when people go, oh, so when you say this, it's because we're using this and it's in this time and we're talking about this. And it's like, yes, you are correct. Absolutely. That's exactly what we're talking about. And so I get that. And kind of along those lines, you were talking about how like a lot of cultures in society, asking questions isn't necessarily a good thing, right? Or sometimes people are seen as being stupid or dumb because they ask. Have you noticed at all how important it is to, or have you seen it at least in your classes, the importance of culture in class and kind of understanding, for example, maybe they say something in English to you that, for you, it's not as offensive because you teach English, but maybe if they said that to somebody, it would be offensive, or vice versa. Maybe you have kind of learned something about their culture and you're like, oh, I don't mean to be offensive.
Oh, yeah. It's usually the first way. Everything I say, I've never had an experience where a student says, oh, this sounds kind of rude. But it's always the case when my student says something, I'm like, oh, that sounds a little bit rude. I know you didn't mean it like that, but let me tell you something. And the first two that come to my mind, the first two common ones is, do you understand? Do you understand? And that sounds like a parental phrase, like, do you understand? So I say, oh, okay, I know you want to check if I understood what you're saying. So instead of, do you understand? You could say like, does that make sense? Or, what do I usually say?
What I'm saying?
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? Yeah, that's the one I say. So that's one. The second one is, I know. And this could be like, a thing that my mom has done with me. Like, okay, I know, like, you don't have to say, I know. Like, it sounds so forward. My mom always taught me, if I tell you something, you just say, okay. Don't say, I know. It sounds rude. So I tell my students, okay, yeah, if you say, I know, it kind of sounds cocky, right? Maybe some people will interpret that way. That's a little, I love talking about
that's
that.
Interesting that you say that, because I've noticed that in my classes too. Like, sometimes they're looking for a word and you give them the word, or you answer their question and they're like, oh, I know. And you're like, then why did you ask? Like in my mind, that's what I want to say to them, is because they'll be like, because you're right. It does come off a little rude. It's like, okay, they asked me for something. I gave them the answer and then they tell me that they know. And I would even go farther and say, like, I don't know if that's even in their culture, because a lot of times, for example, here in like Brazilian culture, people don't say that to a lot of people. But when you're speaking in another language, it's almost like you kind of forget how, that there is this politeness that needs to come across when you speak. I think sometimes people kind of forget that you can be too forward with something that
Yeah, that's true. It's hard because, there are Americans who are really straightforward with how they speak. So I might feel like, oh, that kind of feels a little bit off, but then I try to think in a more wide sense from the bigger picture, because I catch myself. I'm like, oh, but Americans don't. It's hard to generalize Americans. America is huge. So how can I be the one to say, oh, Americans don't say that? I'm sure there are plenty of people who say it in that way, and maybe other people don't feel like it's insulting or rude. So I just give them like my perspective, like, hey, in my personal view, based off of what I experienced, based off of the people I've been around, this is what I feel. And you could take it or leave it, but this is just my minor suggestion, just to give you the maximum maximum level of satisfaction out of your conversations that you could have.
Sometimes I tell people that, for example, if they say something and I tell them, for me, that sounds a little rude. And they'll say, oh, well, I heard someone else say it. And I was like, well, that's somebody else. But the people that I know, the places that I've been, it's not really acceptable. And I think sometimes it's good to let people know that, and I think that kind of goes into another thing of where, I don't know if your students have this issue, but a lot of times my students have this thing where they say one thing and they expect English to only have one response or one answer. And if you give them another answer, they're almost like, well, I learned this. And it's like, it's because that's also true, but this is also something that, something else you can say that we say in other parts.
Yeah, exactly.
You have that? Does that happen a lot?
Oh, well, all the time. Can I think of a specific example? Of course, like there's so many synonyms. Like, oh, I could say like, I dashed to the store, I sprinted to the store, or like some synonyms and different ways to say the same. Like,
you going over to the store, no.
Right? Or like I'm exhausted or I'm drained, like all that. It's like, where are so many phrases? I know so many, but you don't have to know it. I mean, the only reason I'm telling you is because you'll hear this in daily conversation. Yeah. If you hear I'm drained, do you know what they're talking about?
That, like, I tell will people you catch that like, you're gonna, I teach it more because you'll hear it. If you want to have one response that you give all the time, sure, go for it. But other people are not going to obey your set rules that you have for yourself. So, you do have to hear different things. It's like when I tell people, I have a rule in my classes. I don't let anybody tell me that they're fine, ever. Anytime that I ask someone how they are, I always say this, and they say, oh, I'm fine. I say, why are you fine? What happened? What's wrong? And they're like, what do you mean? And I say, it's because I'm fine. I always tell people, I give people the example like this. I said, if I asked my wife how she is, and she says, I'm fine, I'm going to go buy chocolate and flowers. I'm going to come back, and I'm going to ask her, what did I do? What's the problem? And they're like, really? It means that? And I was like, not always, but I'm fine. I always tell people, I'm fine is the response that you give when you don't want to have a conversation with somebody. And they're like, oh, well, that's what they taught us in school. And I was like, yeah, because on the street, when you don't want to talk to people, you tell them that you're fine and you leave. But I was like, it's the end of the conversation. You have to talk to me, so you need to give me a different response.
I like that. That's so true. It's that fake response. Yeah. So I give my student like a new set every time. Like if you want to express something fancy, like, I'm feeling pretty fantastic today. It's not like you need to have fancy vocabulary, but like, why wouldn't you choose to have an interesting conversation, like an awesome connection with someone? And if you do respond with, I'm fine, and it just feels like any other conversation, any regular person. I don't really feel any interest in talking to this person. Let me just move on. I don't have time for this. So it's true.
Yeah. And people are interested in you. They're interested in what you have to say. If someone's asking you how you are, most of the time they really do want to know how you are. They want to know what's going on. And I always tell people, obviously, we don't tell people that we're bad unless you have a certain intimacy with that person. But, it's okay to tell someone, be like, oh yeah, I'm really tired, or, oh, I'm exhausted, like you said, or you can express yourself, and that's okay. And I think that's important, especially as teachers, that we kind of give people those options. Because I think one of the biggest things I get, right, when people want to do classes with me, I always ask them, what's your goal? What do you want to achieve with class, right? I don't want to give you a class that you don't need and that you don't want, right? I want to give you what you want, and I'm going to help you get there with what you need. And they always tell me, I just want to be able to express myself. I want to be able to say things and tell people how I feel. And so when I tell them, be a little bit more detailed, right? Explain yourself a little bit more. It's not because I'm being pushy. It's because at some point when you talk to somebody, you're going to need that. You're going to need to know how to tell people.
Yeah, tell people exactly what you want so that you can get exactly what you want in life. Like, why wouldn't you want the things that you exactly want, or have the interactions and communicate those needs for things that you need from that person, and give that exact precise explanation so they can perfectly understand you. Oh yeah, okay, you're going through this, or you need this, whatever, and they can provide that, and then we can get the most from life in that way. So I also do that. I'm like, can you tell me more about what's that mean? What do you mean when you say you're happy? Can you tell me more about that?
Or yes,
Yeah,
why?
like
What
how?
happened? Why? What
Why?
happened? What did you do? What is this? And I always tell people,
You know?
sometimes I feel like I'm like investigating, but I have to.
Yeah.
I need to know everything. I want to know everything. And that's awesome. And we're getting close to the end of our discussion. I know it's went by super fast, and I hope that there will be a part 2 in the future. But Hannah, I want to ask you, what advice would you give to somebody if they are just starting out, or they're on their process already of learning the language, and kind of, what would you tell somebody, or better yet, if you could go back in time and talk to yourself and give yourself some advice on how to learn the language, what would you tell yourself?
Okay. I mentioned that I had the experience of learning Spanish. I'm going through the experience of learning Mandarin. And as I could go back in time to the beginning of those journeys, I would tell myself, why are you doing this? Like, really, why? And not only why am I doing this, I think a really triggering question, not triggering in a mad way, triggering in a sparking way, something that makes me feel excited. I would say, imagine how you would feel once you are fully fluent, or actually just not fluent, conversationally fluent in that language, to where you can laugh with someone, connect with someone. Like, what's that picture look like? What does that picture look like? Now, I always imagine like I'm in a restaurant laughing with a big group of people after I just told a story in that target language. That feeling, just the feeling, I get attached to the feeling, because we make decisions based off of emotion. Most of the decisions we make are based on emotion. So as soon as you can find that amazing feeling that you can picture, once you have reached that conversational fluency, or whatever kind of goal you have to use in a professional setting, etc., like, imagine every sense of that, the whole experience, from the feeling in your heart to like all of it, and just internalize it and chase it, because I think that is a big driver for me.
That's awesome. That's a wonderful answer, and I completely agree with you. And I think it's interesting because one time, I can't remember which teacher told me, but we had a conversation and they said, remember why you're doing it. Remember what's the purpose, right? Why are you moving forward? So that's an awesome answer. And let's see, do you have any advice for anybody who, this is a different question. I don't think I've asked anybody else this one, so you might be the first answer to it. What would you tell somebody who's already learned the language and doesn't really know where to go? Like they've made it to that intermediate level and they want to improve, but they don't really know what to do and how to move forward from that.
Yeah. So I have a few students who are actually, most of my students are at this point. Not most, maybe, I don't even know. But anyway, I have students that are experienced in this. And I recommend to push out of the comfort zone again. As what happens there, that's called complacency. Complacency is when we get too comfortable with where we're at. We don't know what to do. What's the point of going to the next level? I don't really need to. It's not like I'm going to die if I don't go to the next level. What's the point? I can just skip the class. I can just not practice this week. It'll be okay, right? No, come on. Like, remember why you started again, and figure out how to get out of the comfort zone. So my student, he says, I feel a little bit uncomfortable communicating with my son's friend's parents, because the son's friend's parents are they're English speakers. So I'm like, you know what? I know it's uncomfortable, but just do it. Just do it. This week, I want you to have a longer conversation. I know you stay in the small talk realm. You're comfortable with small talk. Okay. Yeah, that's great. But you still feel the gap and you don't really want to do it. I want you to do it. How about we do it? And I want you to tell me about it when you come back next week. Okay? And he did that. He's like, oh, you know what? I noticed, like, I'm missing this part. Like, I actually don't know how to, like, extend the small talk and go into detail. I'm like, okay, here, let's do that. Because now he figured out, oh my God, I lack this skill. This is something I need to do because I actually didn't realize I couldn't do that. So I'm like, you see? So the more we get out of the comfort zone, the more we'll figure out, oh, I need to fix this. Not like maybe it would be a good idea to fix it. No, like, I would like to do that. So how about we do that? So just the more getting out of the comfort zone.
There's always so much more vocabulary to learn. And so that's an awesome, good advice. And a lot of people who are listening, I know some of these people because they've sent me messages on Instagram, and some of our students who say, you know, I'm at this level, I feel confident, but I want to get better. And so what you said is perfect. You know, do something that makes you uncomfortable, you know, in a good way, obviously. Do something that's going to help you grow and be more than what you are today. So that is awesome. And thank you, Hanna, once again for coming on to the episode and for sharing your story and your tips. And once again, bringing the energy on as well. I thought it was awesome. I can't wait to listen to it after we publish it. And like I said, I hope that there is an episode 2. So you're more than welcome to come back in the future and we can continue. And for everybody who's listening and watching, if you have questions, if you have anything that you want to ask Hanna or that you want to ask me or you want us to discuss, you can find us on Instagram or on YouTube, and you can send us messages and we'll talk to each other and we'll find another time to talk about it. And thank you everybody else for listening to us and making it this far into the conversation. And I hope that you guys have heard new words, new expressions, and that you guys have just had a wonderful time. But thank you so much, everybody, for listening to this week's episode of Lead Talk. Thank you, Hanna, once again. And everybody, have a wonderful week or wonderful day, night, wherever you are, whatever time. And we'll see you next time on Lead Talk. Thank you for listening to Bled Talk. Don't forget to subscribe and follow us for more content. We are on all of the popular podcast platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcast, and we're even on YouTube. Don't forget to send in your questions and your suggestions. Thank you once again, and have a great day.